Hey everybody, Brian Tro coming to you from Mossy Creek Fly Fishing with your fly fishing forecast. The date for today is Monday, the 12th of August. So it's been a while since I've been in here, and a lot has happened. We got a lot of wood to chop, so I'm just going to jump right in head first. We had a tropical storm, much needed tropical storm, come through at the end of last week. Tropical storm Debbie, slow moving, and it brought a lot of rain. On the low end, I think about 3 inches, and on the upper end, particularly in the Blue Ridge, the east-facing slopes, up to 6 inches, so up to a half a foot of rain. Definitely, there was a lot of flooding going on at the end of last week. I always tell people, a lot of folks say, "Hey, how long until things clear up?" And that's kind of a hard question to answer. But in general, the longer we're dry, and we were in a pretty nasty drought for the last 2.5 months. The longer we're dry, the dirtier things get. Okay, it's sort of like if you leave your car out in the driveway for 3 weeks and it doesn't rain. Just the amount of pollen and dust and dirt and grit that's on it when you go to wash it off is it accumulates. And that's what happens to the whole drainage. That's what happens in the entire valley when we don't have rain for 14 days straight, and then you get a huge one that comes over land and washes over fields and washes over parking lots. It carries it all in. So the turbidity was a problem. Some of our larger rivers, like the Shenandoah and the James, they're still dropping. They're getting closer to safe and floatable levels, but the turbidity is an issue and will be for a couple days, depending on where you are. So some folks like to let things clean up a little bit more than others, but the viz is still pretty low, at least on the South Fork, and a couple more days and it'll really start to kind of clean up. The bass have not had off color or dirty water literally in months. And so it provides cover for them, and it helps them get out and forage a little bit. The fishing should be quite good. A few more days into this week, it should start improving. Before the high water hit, we were super dry, super low, fishing suspending flies, fishing topwater flies, things like that, because the water was so skinny. The fish were really stacked up. So it'd be interesting to see how much they spread out, and how much they move around into these other lies. It was a lot of rain. However, when you're in a drought like that, it goes up quick and then it falls down pretty quickly. So we'll see how low it goes. They're not really calling for much chance of a rain until perhaps this weekend. So a lot cooler weather moved in, which is awesome. This morning, took my kids to the bus stop, and it was 52 degrees in my house. So I had to grab a sweater real quick, which was nice. Hopefully a sign of things to come. It looks like it's going to be in the 80s, and then at night in the 50s or the 60s. So things are really, really cooling down. So speaking of temperature and rain, for all you brook trout fishermen out there that have been chomping at the bit and patiently waiting, really good reports on the brook trout stream. So remember, the park is still closed. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know when they're going to open. Not really sure. We're trying to get answers on that, but don't forget there's thousands of miles of brook trout water in the state that are in national forest, the GW, the Thomas Jefferson National Forest, wildlife management areas. We've had customers and guides checking out the water to the west in the Alleghenies. Dry River is flowing. It is awesome. Skidmore Fork is awesome. We have water temps of 60 degrees, which is awesome, and fish being taken like crazy on dries. So remember, those fish have consolidated quite a bit in and around big community pools. So if you know these streams well, you'll know where there's just going to be higher concentrations of them, and they will spread out some. But brook trout are clever. They're not going to get caught if everything dries back up and gets real low again. They're going to stay close to home a little bit, so to speak. So if you know where some of those big community pools were, where all those fish were stacked in, they're going to spread out a little bit. Some may be more than others, and get into those transition water, the pocket water, the little back eddies. In fact, the last couple of days, if you went up brook trout fishing, you were looking for calm because they were really rocking. Those streams were really, really rocking. So, and in addition to all the dirt and silt and pollen that goes in, so does all the food, okay? So all the terrestrials, all the ants, the critters, the hoppers, the beetles, everything that's been kind of hanging out, those all get swept into the streams as well. So the brook trout get oxygen and habitat cover and food all at the same time. And some of the best brook trout fishing that I've ever had in Virginia is in the summer when we get really big rains and all those things kind of come together at once. The fish haven't been fished for, they haven't been pressured so much, they've just been kind of sitting down in their pools, hanging tight, and then all of a sudden they get everything they need and they start chomping. So not too picky on the flies. It's not like there's a lot of mayflies around right now. The fish will eat pretty much anything. With the water being high, you want buoyant flies that float well. Grab your gink and grab a big wolf pattern. Terrestrials obviously work really, really well this time of year because there's a lot of them around. So go enjoy a brook trout fishing. Who knows? That big tropical storm could be like our last rain for the next like month, and we could go right back into drought, and then that could lead right into spawn. So you got a little window here. Take the opportunity, get up in the mountains with these cool nights and cooler days. It feels great up there to get up and wet wade and dry fly fish. All right, so the spring creeks. I was out on Mossy this morning. For some of those who know, I live on the public stretch of Mossy, so I get like mayflies knocking on my front door and my screen door and my back door. So I'm always seeing mayflies, and in my head, I'm always thinking about when hatches begin. But, just like anything else in nature, you see a couple that pop just a little early, some that hang on a little late, etc. So the good news is some of the first hex flies have showed up. I found my first one on my back screen porch like 3 or 4 days ago. Then saw a couple in my pond. And so there's a few hexes out there. That will be the very first substantial mayfly, large mayfly, to hit our spring creeks since we lost our drakes, which is usually mid-June. So they go several months of just eating teeny tiny little trichos and working hard and foraging for any other thing that falls in, crickets, hoppers. So speaking of those, hoppers, crickets, they're getting big. They're all over the place. You can't take a step out at Mossy without seeing dozens go flying in front of you. Those are going to become more and more important as we go into the end of summer and well into fall. The hoppers become really important. So we still have trichos hitting the water this morning. They hit the water around 9:30, something like that. Each day is a little different depending on the sunlight, but around 9:30, and quite a few fish came up and started sipping those. With the creek having been muddy for the last 3 or 4 days, this morning was probably one of the first mornings where they could key back in on those small surface flies. So that's always good to see. They had dirty water. They were eating sculpins and chasing bait, but we're very quickly going to clean back up. That creek clears very fast in the summer because it's so full of moss. It acts like a filter, so to speak. For those of you wondering, it's got some color to it, but you're spooking fish again. All right, we're back to spooking fish. All right, so be sneaky and long leaders and stay back from where you're fishing. Splat your beetles hard. They're eating beetles, they're eating hoppers, they're eating crickets. And one of our favorite flies to imitate the hexes are PMX, the biggest size PMX that we can get. And the ones in orange or brown or peacock, those are really good hex flies. So the hexes usually show up start in the second week in August, which we're in, so mid-August, and then they'll peak around Labor Day, and then they'll peter out over the next week or so after that. So we usually have 3 weeks to 4 weeks of good solid hexes. So for those of you who don't know what the hex fly is, Hexagenia limbata, they are awesome. Silt-bearing nymph, come off in August. You'll see them the last half hour before dark, sort of like the drakes. That's when you'll have spinner falls as well as hatches. But keep all that in mind because that can actually make your morning fishing quite difficult. When they really start keying in on those bugs and they are gorging on them well into nighttime, and these bugs are huge. They're actually bigger than drakes. And then you wake up the next morning and go out at 6:30 and you're trying to get them to eat, a size 20 tricho. That's a tough sell. So if you find that the morning fishing is a little bit slower for the next 3 or 4 weeks, it's because the evening fishing is so good. Now, I pay attention to this a lot because I live right on the creek, but things like big thunderstorms or high wind, anything like that in the evening that'll mess up that spinner fall will lead to hungrier fish the next morning. So if we get 2 or 3 nights with big wind and big storms, etc., they aren't able to get all that protein. You can go out the next morning and you can do a lot better. All right, so pay attention. drill down on this stuff. It makes a big difference as to, you know, how active these fish are. Every little thing from whether the bugs hit the water to the barometer to what's going on. So in summary, bass fishing, we have about 2 months, maybe a little less, of really good warm water fishing, smallmouth, largemouth bass. In another month and a half or so, we'll start updating you guys on muskie again. In another month and a half, we're going to start talking about, you know, state stocked waters and trout fishing a lot more. But try to get out there and take advantage of some brook trout fishing. Could last a week, could last 2 weeks. It's hard to tell. Sorry about that. It's hard to tell how long the brook trout fishing will really last. So get out there and enjoy it while you can. And as always, if you need up-to-date conditions, water levels, all that stuff, give us a call, email, or our favorite, stop by. All right, we'll see you all next week.